The glass tower. The champagne bubbles caught the light like tiny stars trapped in liquid, each one rising and bursting in silent celebration. Sienna Blake stood near the infinity pool on the 42nd floor rooftop, one hand unconsciously resting on the small swell of her belly beneath her simple cotton dress. The Seattle skyline stretched endlessly before her, a kingdom of glass and ambition that she knew far more intimately than anyone here suspected. She hadn't planned to come tonight. The pregnancy had been exhausting, and Derek had insisted she needed rest. "Stay home, sweetheart," he'd said that morning, kissing her forehead with what she'd thought was genuine concern. "These corporate parties are so boring anyway. Just a bunch of tech bros comparing stock portfolios. I'll be home by 10. But by afternoon, the nausea had lifted, replaced by a sudden burst of energy and a desire to surprise her husband. She'd slipped into the least fancy dress she owned and taken an Uber to the Azure Tower, where Quantum Media Group was hosting their annual summer celebration. Getting past security had been easy. She'd simply smiled and mentioned Derek's name. Now, watching the crowd of beautiful people in their designer clothes, Sienna felt almost invisible in her simplicity, which was exactly how she'd wanted it for the past 2 years. When she'd met Derek Vaughn at a community art class, she'd been exhausted by a decade of venture capital warfare, tired of being Sienna Blake, the woman who'd turned a $50,000 inheritance into a $500 million investment empire by age 32. Men either wanted her money or were intimidated by her success. She'd wanted to be seen for herself, not her portfolio, so she'd step back. Put Vincent Park, her brilliant and discreet CFO, in charge of day-to-day operations, and become the version of herself she thought might find real love. A quiet bookstore clerk who read poetry and painted watercolors on weekends. Derek had seemed perfect, handsome, attentive, ambitious, but not threateningly so. He'd loved her gentleness, her simplicity, her supportive nature. Or so she'd believed. She spotted him now, across the glittering expanse of the rooftop. Her heart lifted for a moment. There he was, so handsome in his tailored suit. But he wasn't alone. A woman in a crimson dress that probably cost more than a month's rent stood pressed against his side, her hand on his chest in a gesture far too intimate for colleagues. Jade Monroe. Sienna recognized her from Derek's work stories. The absolutely ruthless senior account director he'd complained about just last week, except Derek wasn't complaining now. He was laughing, his head thrown back in genuine delight, his arm wrapped possessively around Jade's waist. As Sienna watched, frozen behind a cluster of potted palms, Jade rose on her toes and kissed him, a slow, deliberate kiss that spoke of familiarity and practice. The world tilted. Sienna gripped the edge of a planter, her breath coming in short gasps. Around them, a small group of colleagues gathered, drinks in hand. "Finally going public, Vaughn?" A man with silver-streaked hair called out with a knowing grin. Derek shrugged, his smile smug. "Why hide it? Life's too short to be stuck in situations that don't serve you anymore." "What about your wife?" someone asked. Jade laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. "Sienna's sweet, very domestic. I'm sure she's home right now alphabetizing their spice rack or something." The group erupted in laughter. Sienna's nails dug into the concrete planter. "She means well," Derek said, his voice dripping with condescension that Sienna had never heard before. "But I need a partner who operates at my level, you know? Someone with vision, ambition. Let's be honest. Sienna's biggest achievement is reading 3 books a week and making decent lasagna. So what's your plan?" The silver-haired man asked. Derek took a long sip of his scotch. "I'll wait until after the baby comes. I'm not a complete monster. Then I'll set her up in a small apartment, arrange child support, and move forward with my actual life. She'll be fine. She's not exactly equipped to handle anything complicated. Meanwhile..." He pulled Jade closer. "Jade and I are going places. She's got connections, ambition, everything I need to break into the real power circles of this city. And she's not bad to look at," someone added with a leer. "That too," Derek agreed, kissing Jade again. Sienna's vision blurred, but not from tears. Not yet. Instead, a cold clarity descended over her like armor sliding into place. She recognized this feeling. It was the same icy precision she'd felt at 24 when a male competitor had tried to steal her first major deal, calling her too emotional for high-stakes investing in front of a boardroom. She'd destroyed his fund within 8 months. This was worse, infinitely worse. But the response would be the same: calculated, surgical, absolute. She backed away from the palms, her movements silent and deliberate. No one noticed the plain woman in the cotton dress disappearing into the shadows, which was perfect. Let them think Sienna Blake was home organizing spices. Let Derek believe his wife was simple, unequipped for complicated things. He was about to discover that some complications wore very soft disguises. As she slipped into the elevator, Sienna pulled out her phone and sent a single encrypted text to Vincent Park. "The experiment is over. Reactivate all primary accounts. I need a full asset review by morning. And Vincent, find me everything on Quantum Media Group's financial structure. Everything." The response came in seconds. "Welcome back." Miss Blake, the elevator descended toward street level. But Sienna Blake was already rising back toward the empire she'd never truly left. The war hadn't started with Derek's betrayal. It had ended there. The first fracture, the penthouse apartment overlooking. Elliott Bay had always felt too large for 2 people, but Derek had insisted on it. "We need space that reflects our future," he'd said. Now, standing in the marble-floored entryway at 3 in the morning, Sienna understood the truth. He'd wanted a showcase, not a home. She moved through the rooms methodically, her phone pressed to her ear as Vincent Park's calm voice walked her through the financial architecture of her hidden life. "The lease is held by Cascade Holdings, one of your subsidiary LLCs," Vincent explained. "You've been paying the full $3,800 monthly rent through an automated transfer Derek believes comes from his account." "Cancel it," Sienna said, opening the walk-in closet she'd always thought belonged to both of them. The lease agreement tucked in her file box told a different story. Only her signature appeared on the document. Derek had never actually signed anything. "And Vincent? I want documentation of every financial transaction for the past 2 years. Every dinner I paid for, every utility bill, every tank of gas for his car." "His car that's titled in your name," Vincent added quietly. Sienna closed her eyes. "The Tesla? You purchased it as a birthday gift. The title never transferred. Legally, he's been driving your vehicle." The humiliation burned, but Sienna channeled it into fuel. She'd built her fortune by seeing patterns others missed, by understanding that power lived in details. Derek had been living in her world all along, too arrogant to notice the architecture. "I need 3 things by sunrise," she said, pulling her suitcase from the top shelf. "First, freeze every account he has access to. Second, I want that car reported as stolen if it moves from its current location. Third, prepare eviction paperwork for this apartment. 30 days notice, effective immediately." "Consider it done." Vincent paused. "Sienna, are you safe? Do you need security?" "I'm fine. He won't be home until dawn. He never is when he's with her." She packed quickly, taking only what mattered: her grandmother's jewelry, her journals, the ultrasound photo from last week. Everything else was just set dressing for a play that had closed. "One more thing. I need a full workup on Quantum Media Group. Financial health, major clients, pending deals, especially anything involving venture capital." Vincent's intake of breath was audible. "You're going after his company." "I'm going after the foundation of his comfortable delusions," Sienna corrected. "He thinks ambition is a buzzword and connections are networking drinks. I'm going to teach him what real power looks like." She left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter beside a single sticky note with 2 words: "Game over." By the time Derek stumbled home at 6:30, smelling of expensive perfume and top-shelf liquor, Sienna was already in her private office in the Columbia Tower, 20 floors above the city's financial district. The space had remained untouched during her 2-year sabbatical. Vincent had maintained it like a shrine to her inevitable return. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the awakening city. 6 monitors displayed real-time financial data, property holdings, and investment portfolios. On the main screen, a comprehensive dossier on Derek Vaughn materialized as Vincent's team compiled information. "His credit score is good but leveraged," Vincent said, appearing with 2 cups of coffee. "He has $18,000 in personal credit card debt, mostly high-end restaurants and clothing. The corporate card he carries is actually issued to you through a business entity you established to help him build credit. He's been using it to wine and dine Ms. Monroe." Sienna accepted the coffee, her mind already calculating trajectories. "So when I revoke that card, every transaction will be declined, including, according to his calendar, the reservation he has tonight at Canlis with Jade and 2 potential clients." The satisfaction was cold and clean. "What about Quantum Media?" Vincent pulled up a presentation on the center screen. "This is where it gets interesting. Quantum's been hemorrhaging clients for 6 months. Their stock price is down 32%. They desperately need a win, which is why they're pitching hard for the Nexus Technology account, a $50 million digital marketing contract. And Derek's role? He's the pitch lead. If he lands Nexus, he's looking at a promotion to VP and a $200,000 bonus. It's his ticket to the executive floor." Sienna leaned forward, studying the web of connections on screen. "Who's evaluating bids for Nexus?" Vincent's smile was slight but unmistakable. "Their CEO is Brandon Torres. You backed his first startup in 2019. He owes you his entire career. The pieces aligned with satisfying precision." Sienna had always believed that true power wasn't about destruction. It was about revealing reality. Derek had built his confidence on sand, convinced his mediocre talents and charm were enough to carry him anywhere. She wouldn't ruin him. She'd simply remove the invisible support she'd been providing and let gravity do the work. "Set up a call with Brandon," she said. "Nothing direct about Derek. I just want to discuss Nexus's vendor selection process. Ask intelligent questions. Plant seeds." Her phone buzzed. 14 text messages from Derek, escalating from confused to angry. "Where are you? Why isn't the rent showing as paid? My cards aren't working, Sienna. This isn't funny. Call me now." She blocked his number and deleted the messages unread. "The eviction notice?" she asked. "Being served by courier at 9 a.m., Vincent confirmed. "He'll have 30 days, but given that he has no verifiable income without your support, finding new housing will be challenging." Sienna stood, moving to the window. Somewhere below, Derek was probably panicking, his carefully constructed world beginning to crack. She felt a flutter in her belly, the baby active this morning. She placed her hand over the movement, a protective gesture. "I won't let our child grow up thinking this is what love looks like," she said softly, "or that power means belittling someone who trusted you." Vincent joined her at the window. "What he said about you last night, it was projection. He's terrified of his own insignificance, so he tried to make you small enough to tower over." "I know." Sienna turned from the window, her reflection in the glass, showing someone Derek had never really seen. "But he's about to learn something important. I wasn't small when I loved him. I was generous. And generosity withdrawn looks a lot like devastation when you've been mistaking it for weakness." The morning sun caught the edge of her coffee cup, throwing light across the room like a blade. In 72 hours, Derek Vaughn would lose his apartment, his credit, and his credibility. In 2 weeks, he'd lose the Nexus deal, and with it, his last chance at relevance. And through it all, Sienna would be exactly where she'd always been. At the top, looking down, finally visible to a man who'd been too blind to see past his own reflection. The fracture had begun. Soon would come the collapse. The new foundation. 3 months later, autumn painted Seattle in shades of gold and rust. Sienna stood in the nursery of her new penthouse, a space she'd designed without compromise, with windows overlooking Puget Sound and walls painted the exact shade of twilight blue she'd always loved. "Ms. Blake?" Vincent appeared in the doorway. "The final reports are ready." She settled into the rocking chair she'd chosen herself, no longer pretending to have modest taste. The baby would arrive in 6 weeks, and Sienna had spent the past months building not just a nursery but a life without apology. "Tell me," she said. Vincent sat across from her, tablet in hand. Derek Vaughn filed for bankruptcy last week. The Nexus deal fell through when Brandon Torres personally called to express concerns about Quantum's lack of strategic vision. Without that win, Quantum fired Derek and 3 other executives. He's currently living with his parents in Spokane and working at a call center. Sienna absorbed this without satisfaction or guilt. She'd simply removed her support and watched reality reassert itself. And Jade Monroe? Transferred to Quantum's Denver office to escape the scandal. Apparently, she's engaged to a software engineer she met on a dating app. Derek was never mentioned in her social media after his firing. The predictability of it almost made Sienna laugh. Jade had wanted proximity to power, not Derek himself. When he'd tumbled from his precarious perch, she'd simply found someone with steadier footing. He tried to contact you 17 times last month. Vincent continued carefully. Emails, calls from different numbers, even a letter delivered here by courier. I know. Sienna had read the letter once. A rambling document that oscillated between apology and accusation. He was sorry, but she'd overreacted. He'd made mistakes, but she'd been cruel. He wanted to be part of their child's life, but only if she could forgive him properly. The entitlement threaded through every sentence like a poisonous vine. What's his legal standing? His attorney, a public defender, is arguing for visitation rights. Given his current circumstances, any judge will see he's not capable of providing stable support. We can arrange supervised visits if you choose, but you'll have full custody. Sienna placed her hand on her belly, feeling the strong kicks of a child who would grow up watching their mother operate from a position of authentic power. Supervised visits, but not until after the baby's first birthday. He needs to prove stability first. And Vincent, I want a trust fund established in my child's name. Enough for college, a home, security. But nothing directly accessible to Derek ever. Already drafted, Vincent said with a slight smile. You'll also want to know that Blake Ventures had its most profitable quarter on record. The 3 startups you backed in July are all exceeding projections. Your net worth has increased by $42 million since June. The numbers meant less than they once had. Money was a tool, not a trophy. But Sienna appreciated what they represented. She'd rebuilt her empire while pregnant and heartbroken, proving to herself that her worth had never been tied to Derek's perception of her. There's one more thing, Vincent said, his tone shifting to something almost warm. You received a call from Pacific Northwest University. They want you to speak at their Entrepreneurship Summit in January. The theme is Building Success on Your Own Terms. Sienna looked around the nursery, the hand-carved crib, the shelves already lined with books, the window seat where she imagined reading to her daughter on rainy afternoons. This room, this life, was hers in a way her previous existence never had been. She'd tried to make herself smaller to earn love, but real love would never require diminishment. Accept it, she said. And Vincent? Thank you. For never questioning my choice to step back, and for making my return seamless. You deserved to try, Vincent said simply, even if it didn't work out the way you hoped. After he left, Sienna opened her laptop to the draft of the speech she'd been writing in quiet moments. It began with a quote she'd found weeks ago. The most dangerous woman is the one who's been underestimated and survived to prove everyone wrong. She thought about Derek, probably sitting in a cubicle in Spokane, still believing he'd been wronged by a woman who'd hidden her true self. He couldn't understand that she'd shown him exactly who she was, someone capable of profound love and loyalty, and he'd mistaken those qualities for weakness. His loss wasn't the money or the status. It was never knowing the real Sienna Blake, the woman who could be both soft and steel, who could build empires and rock babies, who could love deeply without losing herself. Her phone chimed. A message from her obstetrician. Are you still planning on finding out the gender? Sienna typed back quickly. Already know. It's a girl. She'd decided on a name weeks ago. Grace. Not because her daughter would be graceful in the delicate sense, but because she would understand grace as power, the ability to be generous without becoming powerless, to be strong without becoming cruel. Outside, the October sun broke through the clouds, throwing light across Elliott Bay. Sienna stood and moved to the window, watching sailboats cut through the water with purposeful direction. She'd chart a similar course for her daughter, clear-eyed, authentic, unwilling to hide brilliance for anyone's comfort. Derek Vaughn had replaced her without a second thought, never realizing she'd been irreplaceable. He'd come back holding desperation and excuses, but Sienna Blake had returned holding all the cards, and this time, she was building something no one could take away. Not a man's approval, not society's expectations, not even her own fear of being too much. She was simply, finally, enough. And as Grace kicked against her palm, strong and insistent, Sienna smiled. Her daughter would never learn to make herself small. She'd never be taught that love required diminishment or that power had to be apologized for. The empire Sienna had built would be Grace's inheritance, not just the wealth, but the understanding that true strength came from never again confusing generosity with weakness. The glass tower stretched below, reflecting a city full of possibility. And at the top, Sienna Blake stood in her truth, unshakable at last. The end.